Okay, so today I'm going to demonstrate your bad hair day project. All right, so you will need the magazine picture that you found or the printed paper that you found, and keep in mind that your finished composition will be about this size. So wherever he's going to go, you want to have enough room for your big spectacular hairdo and also some interesting background work, okay? So it shouldn't be too big, shouldn't be too small, big enough so we know who it is. And I might decide I'm going to cut off some of his torso so that I can include a little bit more background stuff. Okay. The first thing you will do is thumbnails. Keep in mind thumbnails are small, sketchy drawings. So let's plan it out as if I want a horizontal composition. And I'm going to say his head is going to go here, and the collar, and that's basically Johnny Depp right there. Okay? And then, like I said, you have organic versus geometric lines in your design. So the hair can either be organic or geometric. Okay, so think about what you like better. Maybe try both versions, but think about how to fill your space. So maybe I'll do, you know, some sort of a design like this. I'm going to think about how I want to break up the hair. And since it's Johnny Depp, maybe I'll look to some inspiration from, you know, when he was the Mad Hatter, or I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean, whatever. Same if it's a sports star, you know, incorporating different visual imagery that could pertain to that person, if it's a football player, basketball player, whatever it is. So I'm going to try something else. Now maybe here's his head, you know, shoulders, and my design's going to go more vertically. All right, and I'm going to play around. I'm going to get some details. I'm going to figure it out. Maybe I like the verticality of this, but I want him a little bit more centered. And maybe, you know what, I want to include more of his torso, so I'll just cut that off basically. And maybe this time I want the design to be sort of geometric. Okay, whatever it is. All right, just sketch it loosely, and then you could start to play with some patterns like we talked about with the Zentangles. When you're happy with this, and we've discussed it, and you know what you want to do for your final surface, you will get a sheet of drawing paper. Okay, it's paper. It's not like the illustration board we've been working on, so it's a little bit flimsier. Right? It will get wrinkled. It will get bent if you don't treat it carefully. So make sure at the end of the day you put it into your big folder so it stays nice and flat. So I said, I think in the presentation, to do an inch border. I'm going to change that to a 1/2 inch border. So I want to draw a vertical line right here, but first I need to measure in horizontal. I need to hold my ruler horizontally to get that line. So my ruler doesn't start at 0, it starts in a little bit. So I'm going to make sure the edge of my ruler is lined up with the edge of my paper, and I'm going to make a little mark at the 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to go up to the top of my paper and do the same thing. And then I'm going to connect them. Okay. And then you can see I kind of cut these a little bit crooked. This line here is not so straight. So I'm going to show you a trick to deal with that. All right. So now I'm going to rotate my paper this way, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to line up my 0, not necessarily the edge of my ruler, depends on what ruler you have. Oh, not an inch. We're making a mark at a 1/2 inch. Go down here, do the same thing, and then connect with that ruler. You want to make sure you're holding your ruler with your fingers sort of spread apart so that it doesn't move on you, and light pencil lines, okay? And now, because this line, as I pointed out earlier, is not totally straight, and you can see it if you line the paper up with the grid on this cutting mat, you can see it's not perfectly straight, okay? What I'm going to do is measure from this line. I know this line is straight, so I'm going to go from here. And I know my paper is 12 inches wide, and if I'm making a 1/2 inch border, I need it to be 11 inches wide when I'm done, so I'm going to make the mark at 11. I'm lining up my 0 point with my 1/2 inch line that I drew, and then I'm making my mark at 11. Okay, and no, it doesn't look straight on the paper, but it will be straight, I promise you. Okay, so now you know that this is 90 degrees, this is 90 degrees, okay? I'm gonna rotate here and do the same. So if you get a really wonky cut piece of paper, that would be my trick to sort of remedy that problem. So the interior dimensions, if you want to double check when you're all done, will actually be 11 by 17, okay? So I'm going to check here. Let's look at my width here, and that is 17 inches. And then this way is 11 inches, so perfect, okay? And then this is a little bit funky, but that's just because I cut it a little bit funky. Don't worry about that. When that's done, put your name in the border on the front of your paper, okay? Don't put it anywhere. Leave it on the back. Don't write it in here in the middle because you could damage your paper, okay? Now, the next step is to carefully cut this out. And keep in mind, we are cutting out all of the hair. So all that will remain is the photograph of your person, okay? So we're gonna need scissors, and you may need an X-Acto knife. Now you are not using X-Acto knives if I'm not here, okay? So if you need an X-Acto knife for certain details, you can sort of do your best, cut out as much as you can. You could just do 2 masking tape rolls to hold this in place as you begin to draw on your final surface. And then when I'm back on Wednesday and or Friday, you can trim it perfectly with the X-Acto knife. With an X-Acto knife, you need to make sure you're on a cutting mat. You cannot cut directly on the tables. It will damage the tables, it will damage the blade. It's also unsafe because it will slip, it can slip, and you can get cut very badly. Okay, they are very sharp. The bottoms of these have sort of this hexagon shaped thing, and it kind of prevents them from rolling off the table. It will eventually, stop. It won't just keep going. They do have caps. Those are very helpful. You want to use those, okay? For the majority of your work, though, you can probably cut out with scissors. So I'm just going to roughly cut this out. I don't need his hair. Okay. So keep in mind, we want to see really good craftsmanship with this. So I'm really going to take my time and cut this out perfectly. And again, you may find that you need the X-Acto blade, which I'm going to switch to. Okay, so it depends on your image. If you have a pretty simple image, you might not need this. So I'll leave the lid here. So I'm going to make sure my fingers are out of the way, and I always pull the blade towards me. So I'm going to start on his shoulder here. Okay, and I'm always going to rotate so that I'm cutting towards me. I don't want to be cutting horizontally or anything like that. I'm going to stop at his ear. I'm going to rotate, and slow and steady definitely wins the race with this. So now I'm going to get rid of that piece. I'm going to go over here maybe. I'll do his cheek over here. Okay, and I'm cutting off the hair. I don't need the hair, right? Because I'm giving him a new hairdo. Okay, if you found that your image you printed is maybe too big for the paper, you won't have enough room to draw your hair design, you can reprint that. It's not a problem. Just find the image again and resize it accordingly. I don't encourage you to waste paper, but it happens. So I'm going to very carefully cut this out. And see how I keep rotating so that I'm always cutting. I'm dragging the knife towards me, so I'm not trying to fight. This is like the most natural thing for my hand to do. Okay, you want to keep this nice and neat. All right. So that's gone. And I'm going to do his hair over here. The hair doesn't have to be totally perfect, you know, like if they've got a weird bang situation or a little fringe or something like that. Just make the executive decision and make it look the best way that you think it's going to look, you know. Okay, and then I'm going to cut out around his ear. Okay, and there we go. There's Johnny Depp with no hair. I could decide later on, maybe I'm going to cut out his mustache. I don't know. But for right now, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut this straight, and I'm actually going to use the ruler to help me make sure that's a perfectly straight line. Okay. And actually, I forgot to get glue sticks before I started this demo. That's okay. All right. So before you go any further, cap goes back on the X-Acto blade. X-Acto blade gets returned to me, okay? Because I don't want them walking out of this room. So I'm going to figure out where he's going to go. It's okay if it goes off the edge of your paper for now, you know, whatever works. Let me grab a glue stick. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to say I'm going to put him over here. All right, I'm going to cut off a little bit because I don't really need too much of his torso. Grab a piece of newsprint or scrap piece of paper, flip this guy over, glue stick, okay, and coat the whole surface. That's why we're going to use this scrap paper, so it's okay if you go over the edge. Okay, just be careful. You don't want to have too many